When an innovation is adopted, not all consumers adopt at the same time. Some adopt early, some adopt late, some never adopt at all. And a useful model to classify the various adopters based on their readiness to accept new innovations is known as the innovation adoption lifecycle. It is a bell curve with 5 categories. To set it in context, think of the personal computers. Personal computers were commercialized in the 1970s. The percentage of homes with personal computers was about 50% in the year 2000, and it is about 80% today. So the adoption is gradual. The percentage of homes with a 3D printer today is about less than 5% in the United States. So the consumer adoption life cycle classifies adopters based on their readiness to accept new innovations over time. And it accurately describes how a technology is adopted by a set of consumers, by a community, or society. So what are the various groups? The various groups are innovators at 2.5% who are willing to take chances. The early adopters at 13.5% who are actually idealists, who are okay with imperfect products. The early majority at 34% for whom the product has to be perfect. In other words, in innovation terms, the product market fit must be highly appropriate. Then you have 34% late majority who are usually late to adopt and wait till the majority of the market has adopted. And last but not the least are the skeptics at 16% who are unwilling to adopt. Think of the people who still use typewriters today for word processing instead of using computers. These are likely to be the laggards today. So as you can see from the adoption curve, each category has certain characteristics. But the most important thing is that all these innovations go through a predictable process before becoming widely adopted. So an understanding of the innovation adoption lifecycle helps us to develop appropriate strategies. How do we know that a product has not failed and fallen into the chasm, but actually transitioned to being successful? We look at the industry level figures and we see if there is a tipping point or a takeoff point, or in layman's terms, an elbow. When that happens, it usually tells you that the industry is becoming viable with a lot of opportunities for companies to become mass market companies. To understand the takeoff point, we need to understand the non-cumulative bell-shaped curve that talks about the various categories of adopters. But this non-cumulative bell-shaped curve can be plotted as a cumulative distribution. What does that mean? We know that the non-cumulative bell-shaped curve has various categories: 2.5% innovators, 13.5% early adopters, 34% early majority. Instead of stacking them side by side, if you stack them one on top of each other, then you get the cumulative curve. Now let's compare the cumulative S-curve with the non-cumulative bell-shaped curve, and you find that in the point where it transitions from the early majority to the early adopter category, you have what we call as a takeoff point, a hockey stick pattern or a J-shaped point, which Malcolm Gladwell calls as the tipping point. But there is a larger point that I want to make here, which is that innovation adoption is never linear. The takeoff point or the tipping point can either be based on the sales or the number of firms. If it is based on sales, we call it the sales takeoff point. If it is based on the number of firms, we call it the firm takeoff.